written in the 21st chapter of St. Luke, beginning at the 5th verse. While some were speaking about the temple, how it was adorned with the beautiful stones and the gift dedicated to God, Jesus said, "As for these things that you see, the days will come when not one stone will be left upon another. All will be thrown down." They asked him, "Teacher, when will this be? And what will be the sign that this is about to take place?" And he said, "Beware that you are not led astray, for many will come in my name and say, 'I am he,' and the time is near. Do not go after them. When you hear of wars or insurrections, do not be terrified, for these things must take place first, but the end will not follow immediately." Then he said to them, "Nation will rise up against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be great earthquakes in various places, famines and plagues, and there will be dreadful portents and great signs from heaven. But before all this occurs, they will arrest you and persecute you. They will hand you over to the synagogues and prison, and you will be brought before kings and governors because of my name. This will give you an opportunity to testify. So make up your minds not to prepare your defense in advance, for I will give you the words and wisdom that none of your opponents will be able to withstand or contradict. You will be betrayed even by parents and brothers, by relatives and friends, and they will put some of you to death. You'll be hated by all because of my name, but not a hair of your head shall perish, but you will endure. But by your endurance, you will gain your souls." Here ends the gospel for the day. Please be seated. I know you are not excited about participating in the sermon, but I just need to ask you a question. How many of you here in the last year have either heard or told a good news, bad news joke? Nobody. That's pretty hard to believe. Those are fairly popular. As a matter of fact, I seem to hear them every day. The problem seems to be that the bad news is always what comes second. It eclipses the good news. I guess you are expected, if they say and come to you and they say, "I have good news and bad news," they'll expect you to say, "I want the good news first." When I'm confronted with that, I usually say I want the bad news first, but I'm a Hallmark watcher. I like to wind up on the good side. So, since none of you have heard any of these jokes, let me tell you a couple so that you have an idea what they are all about. His son comes home and his father is sitting in a chair. He's had a hard day. His teenage son says, "Dad, I've got to tell you, I've got some good news and I've got some bad news." And the father said, "Look, I've had a really difficult day. I really am not in the mood for any bad news. So tell me the good news." "Dad, are you sure you don't want to hear both the good and the bad news?" "No, I just told you, son, I'm very busy. I'm not in a good mood, so just tell me the good news." He said, "Okay, the good news, Dad, is your airbags on your car work really well." I can relate to that one because a couple of members in the last church went to Hawaii. When we moved to Hawaii, they took care of my daughter. And they had a car, and they called back one morning, and they said, one of them said, Hans, before I tell you what happened, nobody died, and nobody was badly injured. So I understand that good news, bad news scenario. There's another one in which an artist comes into the gallery, and the gallery owner who has his pictures. And he said, well, what's happening with my pictures? And she says, well, I have some good news and I have some bad news. And he says, well, let me hear the good news first. And she said, well, somebody came into this gallery the other day and said, if this artist dies, does the price of his picture suddenly appreciate? And I said, well, yes, they do. As a matter of fact, very often when this happens, and if it's a famous artist, it doubles immediately. But she said, when I told him this, she bought every picture in the gallery. And he says, well, that's great news. That's wonderful. And she said, well, the bad news is it was your doctor who bought the pictures. Our gospel text today sounds like a good news, bad news situation. But I want to tell you, it isn't. With the gospel is only good news. We revel in the gospel because it always brings us to the awareness of what's important and where our lives are going and what the prospect for the end of our lives will be. But in our gospel text, Luke is Jesus talked to by some people around him as they were looking at the temple. And they said, isn't this a beautiful temple? This is marvelous. This is awesome. I mean, everything just seems perfect with it. It encompasses 36 acres. The floors are white marble. They're encased or surrounded by gold. And Jesus seems like a killjoy. He says, there'll come a time, not too far away, when this will be a mess. There will not be one rock upon the other. It'll be totally destroyed. And not only that, but you're going to face all kinds of bad things. And you will be persecuted for keeping my name holy. Well, just think of it. If Jesus came to New Sweden today, and before you went in the church, you were out there, and you said, Jesus, isn't this great? This is the most photographed church in Texas. And he turned to you saying, will not be forever before this is just ground into the dirt. And besides that, you're going to have more persecutions. And if you stayed loyal to me, you are going to suffer all kinds of things. Seems like a downer, doesn't it? Bad news. But Jesus doesn't mean it as bad news. The end is always glory, reveling in his kingdom, in his wonderful, wonderful world in the hereafter. I think there are a few things that we can take them. I think there are 4 that we get from our gospel text this morning. The first one is Jesus telling us not to put our trust, our salvation, all our hopes on material things, because they'll all disappear. They're not dependable. They're not worthy. And we just never seem to get it, do we? We trust in those things that we think are important as far as this world is concerned. Our job, our bank accounts, our reputations. We like our gold and our silver.
We think the relationships will go on forever. But if you think about it, those of you who have lived almost as long as I have, those things don't hold up. One by one, they suddenly disappear. You find something that doesn't go right. People depended upon their stocks, and we had the Depression. Stocks fell out of bed. People jumped out of windows and killed themselves. Most of us have experienced broken relationships. Most of us experienced when friends or relatives turned against us. The big pitch in AARP this week is about scams that target seniors, because somebody comes and becomes a good friend of yours, you begin to trust them, and then you find out that you've been duped. Fortunes have been stolen. We think that professional sports, those people are paid so much, they would never turn crooked on us. During the last 2 weeks, 2 baseball players, all are making millions and millions of dollars through pitches, through bad pitches that totaled $55,000 for a bad pitch, because people are gambling on that, and the crooks can control it. As we live through life, we find out once and again that the things that we thought were so important as far as our material life is concerned kind of betray us. Even relatives, sometimes even family. That's in the gospel. Second thing I think this text says is there will be problems. There will be problems. There will be persecutions. There will be all kinds of things that will happen to you. There will be earthquakes. There will be hurricanes. There will be all kinds of possible disastrous events. But all this must happen before the end comes. F. Scott Peck, in his book, The Road Less Traveled, starts out his book by saying, life is tough. You have to be very, very tough to survive. Death will separate us. Relatives and friends will desert you. And one of the chief criticisms of those that criticize our faith say that if you had a loving God, He wouldn't allow these things to happen. But the text says we live in a sinful world. And things are bad. And certain things that you don't want to happen will happen. But it happens for a purpose. And the end is the kingdom of Christ and a perfect eternity. Third thing I think the gospel says is you basically decide what is right, what is good, and what is bad. Have you ever experienced something that you thought was bad back in your life? And as life progressed, you found out that it might have been one of the best things that ever happened to you? The judgment whether something is good or bad really depends upon how you approach it. The gospel says when you approach something and it looks bad, look for the possible good meaning in it. Isn't that something strange to say? Well, there used to be a comedy routine, and I don't remember who did it, whether it was Burns and Allen or it was one of the other shows. But there always was a conversation between two people, and they would say, what happened in your life this last week? And they would tell him the first thing that had happened, and they'd say, oh, that's bad. And he would say, no, it's good. Because this happened as a result of that. And then the person would say, well, that's good, I'm glad to hear that. Oh no, it turned out to be bad because this is what happened. And they say, well, that's good. And they would go back and forth. And it had a very good point. The point was that you can interpret things the way you want them. And some people just seem, because they are involved in a relationship with a God, they have a tendency to look for the good that God is working out of the bad. We are reminded constantly that 9/11 was the worst attack we've ever had, and it was terrible. 9/11 was bad. But I have a tendency now, when people ask me, and they ask me quite a bit, what will it take to get this country together again? And my answer is stop. I say another 9/11. You know what happened at 9/11? People started to work together. There didn't seem to be any Republican Democrat for a while. People knew that we had to remain strong. We had to support each other. We had to support our leaders. The churches started to fill back up. Say, was this a tragedy? Or was it something probably that was good? What about the COVID thing? That was so bad, wasn't it? One of the things we learned about COVID, we had to support each other. We found ways to survive very well. And as far as this church is concerned, we stayed open. Was it a good thing or a bad thing? Now people call up and they say, I got COVID, but I'll be back in a couple of days. It's just one of those things that happen. It's an inconvenience, not something terrible. The bombing of Pearl Harbor is another thing that we experienced in our history. The day that we'll live in infamy until for eternity. The bombing of Pearl Harbor was one of the best things that could happen to America in 1939, or 41, excuse me. Because America was in such a state of being underprepared for war that if the Japanese had attacked California, they probably would have won the war. We probably would have been under foreign domination. The mistake the Japanese made was they bombed Pearl Harbor, and we had a chance to build up the military in time to provide a good fighting force. I remember a woman coming into the nursing home in Iran. And you never really want to go to a nursing home. But I remember one of the things that she said, unlike so many that came in. Wheeled her in the door. She looked at me and she looked around. She said, well, I wonder what God has for me to do here. License had been taken away. Couldn't really walk now. She was under constant care and observation. And she comes in and she says, I wonder what God has for me to do here. And one of the powerful lessons of this text can be that's the way you have to approach life. I remember an incident that I had in Hawaii, and I had a locksmith business. You probably knew that too. But in 1988, I got a call. And I wasn't told who it was, but I was supposed to be someplace at church, and I had to give it up because I had to make this call because there's nobody else to take it. I went out there and I looked at the person and I said, what's your name? And he said, Michael Dukakis. And I said, that name sounds familiar. And You know he was the person that lost the 1988 election to George Bush, who was a Democratic candidate for president. He'd locked his keys in the car, couldn't get in. And I said, "You're Michael Dukakis, you're the presidential nominee that lost?" And he said, "Yes, I am." And he said, "How much is this going to cost me?" And I said, "It won't cost you anything if I can ask you some questions, because I've never been in a position like this where I could ask questions. I'll give it to you free." And we started talking and talking. And I said, "You know, I was supposed to do something important in a church today, and I gave it up to be out here, and I was grumbling all the way out." I said, "This is such a good thing that happened to me. I can't imagine having this time with you. I appreciate you. And I got to tell you this." And it taught me a very good lesson. I voted against you in the election. But if I had met you first, you seem so genuine, I would have voted for you. And he said, "Well, you know what?" He said, "I was really upset about locking my keys in the car." But he said, when you said you're going to want a half an hour of my time, I was kind of upset about it. But I didn't expect to have a locksmith to talk to me like my college professor. He said, "It's been really great to talk to you. And you told me something about Jesus." Whether something is bad or good or not, you never really know, do you? But the final message of the gospel is always the message of the gospel. The gospel is the good news. The gospel means good news. The gospel is Christ will reign supreme. Next Sunday is the last Sunday in our church year. It's called Christ King Sunday. And it's when we celebrate the fact that the future, Christ will reign over all the world, and we will sing in his kingdom. Luke winds up this text by saying, "Not a hair of your head will perish." I don't understand that one, because I'm losing my hair. But I guess it's just a metaphor anyway, right? I said to somebody who was in here, who is bald, and I said, "I'm losing my hair. Can you tell me how it feels to be bald?" And he said, "Well, some people have perfect heads and others covered with hair." And I said, "What a great way to look at it." But the end story is, by your endurance, you will gain your soul. You'll celebrate in paradise. That is the final gospel message. It is the thing we live for. It's the thing we die for. We will not be in control, but God is in control. And we will live more wondrously than we've ever lived before. That's the good news. Amen. All right. The pulpit hymn is what? And the number? 785. Please stand as you are able.